June 30th in Port-Said Governorate, which is up by the Mediterranean. It is a 2.5-hour drive from Cairo along a desert highway that connected the capital to the Suez Canal zone. She was unidentified. She had been abandoned there like she was nothing, like she had never existed. The authorities issued an order to lift fingerprints, which led them to identify the victim, and from her identity, the investigation threads began to pull, slowly at first, then faster, unraveling towards a single address in Fifth Settlement. But this was not the first body. The charges would eventually confirm 3 murders committed between November 2023 and May of 2024. For 6 months, he had been killing in that apartment, in that soundproofed room, while his neighbors came and went, with his social media followers watching his English lessons, while Egypt went about its daily life. 6 months, 3 women, all abandoned in the desert between Cairo, Port Said, and Ismailia, thrown onto desert highways like they were trash, like these lives meant nothing, like nobody would come looking for them. But thankfully, someone was looking. Now, who was Karim Salim? This is the question that haunted Egyptians after his arrest, because the answer was deeply and disturbingly ordinary. He was not a recluse. He was not someone who gave off warning signs that neighbors could point out. He was a man with a public face, a digital face, that thousands of Egyptians had welcomed into their homes through a screen. Local media reported that the suspect presented educational content on social media under the name Phonics to teach English, and had millions of views. Now think about that, a man who taught people, who built a platform on education and self-improvement, who looked into a camera and smiled and explained grammar rules and vocabulary to an audience that trusted him. And then he went into a soundproofed room to do evil things. He was 37 years old at the time of his arrest. He had been married but divorced. He had divorced his wife 4 years earlier. He had a young son whose custody would become its own painful legal battle after his arrest. He held a dual citizenship, like I mentioned before, and spent years living outside Egypt before returning. And forensics examination later revealed the presence of drug residue in his blood, consistent with the use of hash, crystal methamphetamine known as ice, and tramadol. He was not a man that had snapped one day, and he was not used tools, not causes, for his crimes. Everything about what he did was calculated and planned and repeated multiple times. I want to tell you now about his apartment. Then investigations revealed that the suspect had rented an apartment in a well-known residential compound, and he had prepared a soundproof room, like I said before. 2 weeks he moved in, and within 2 weeks the rooms were ready. Security guards at the compound revealed new details about the suspect, with one saying he was calm in manner, frequently visited the apartment with young women, and had requested soundproofing for a room, saying it was to avoid disturbing anyone. He explained it so reasonably, so politely, and he was considerate for his neighbors, and he didn't want to be a disturbance. Then surveillance cameras in the residential compound captured the moments of the suspect entering and leaving with his victims at late hours of the night. On camera, coming and going in plain sight, in one of the most surveilled and security-conscious neighborhoods in Cairo. Nobody thought twice social media shut down with it. News channels ran it around the clock. Egyptians who had never discussed true crime publicly found themselves sitting in a shock towards articles, calling family members and locking their doors. Now, you need to understand, Egypt, like any other country, does experience crime, but serial murders are not really common here. Single crimes, yes. Serial crimes, not so much. So this was quite a shock, because this thought wasn't ancient history. It wasn't a century ago, like my last story, for example, in a different country or a different city. It was last year. It was 2 years ago, I'm sorry. In a neighborhood that millions of Egyptians know. It is the neighborhood that I personally live in. It was a man with a YouTube channel that people had subscribed to. It was a reminder, a brutal one, that evil does not announce itself. It doesn't look strange. It doesn't live on the margins. Sometimes it rents a modern apartment, installs some soundproofing, and teaches English lessons on social media. That's sometimes what evil looks like, and we did not know that before this case. Some observers considered this among the most heinous crimes in Egypt's modern history, and we have seen many terrible crimes, like Ryan Sikina, who I've mentioned in my last video. I covered their story, and El Turbini, who I guess I will dedicate a video for him as well. Not to mention the long, dark catalog of violence that every country accumulates over time. But something about this case kind of stuck differently. It's the modernity of it, how modern, how unsettling, how normal he looked, the setting of it, the double life he led, the 300 videos, how he used technology to cover his crimes, the accomplice who brought him his own daughter. The judge said himself that he found no path to mercy for him. These women, they went to an apartment in a gated compound in the most modern part of Cairo. They did not go back home. And somewhere in the desert between Cairo and Port Said and Ismailia, on the roads that thousands of Egyptians drive every day, their bodies were left like they were nothing, like they never were anything. Now, I said in the beginning that this case is different from the others, from the other case that I've covered on the channel. And I think that matters not because it is more important than others that I covered or will cover. All the cases matter, all the victims matter, but because it's a reminder that darkness we talk about on this channel or in life in general isn't